this is actually not an easy one to go through, and we're just going to slowly go through and talk about the protest process. Um, and it's really, to me, it's complicated, and there's a lot of um, scenarios and things that happen in the process. And I think Seth actually put a thing about, how do you? I didn't know what's 14 when you say Rule 14.
Rule 14 is failure to avoid, and that is one of the easiest ways in both arbitration and in a protest hearing. If there is a collision, somebody taps you, even if you are absolutely dead to rights wrong, you can still get the other person thrown or get the protest thrown out because they did not avoid you and they could have. So, Rule 14 is something that everyone in our group does need to fully understand and master because it can also keep you from getting tossed by some of the professional teams that like to bully the amateur team specifically. So, if you know how to win a protest utilizing Rule 14, it is very, very, very valuable because even something as simple as on starting lines, somebody heads down at you, or let's say the lured boats just come up and hit you, even if you're not moving, even if you are wrong, if they just come up and hit you arbitrarily, you can still win on Rule 14. So you might have been wrong on not keeping clear as a weather boat, but because they just came up and hit you, they also get tossed. So if they file the protest in arbitration, they'll tell them you're both getting thrown out. If you file this protest, you get thrown out too.
You can
So
be thrown.
fully understanding how Rule 14 applies and how to use it in a protest hearing can also keep you out of frivolous protest. Because there's a lot of times that protests are just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than going to the room as a recipient. So let's say I'm protesting somebody. Let's say I beat them in that race and it wasn't really that important, or minor damage or no major damage was caused. You still, as you need to understand what can get you thrown out as well when walking into a protest. There's nothing worse than a small protest turning into you getting chucked yourself, even though the other party was wrong. Rule
Yeah.
14 is why most people get thrown out of a protest, and it's both parties, the correct person and the incorrect person.
Yeah.
Extremely common J70s.
Yep.
It's the best way to defend yourself from a protest as well.
Yep. Yeah, we did talk a little bit about this, but happy to review it again.
But how it applies in a protest is, I think, that is one of the only rules that is based on what is stated, how it's used in a protest for arbitration or with a jury that can get protests thrown out. Because almost at any point during a protest, the other person can withdraw their protest up until I forget which stage, I'd have to look. But a protest can be withdrawn pretty much almost the entire time that you were sitting there at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, there's a huge process in here, but why don't we start here and then we'll delve into the protest process and see how far we get tonight. But it's definitely a topic and things to go through here a little bit. But let's just start on that point, Seth, and we can work together on this one. But here's what I want to highlight, right? Is when you're talking about avoiding contact, right? If reasonably possible, a boat shall avoid contact with another boat, not cause contact between boats, right? So you can do something that actually causes another boat to crash into another boat, right? Not cause contact between a boat and an object that shall be avoided. However, a right-of-way boat or one sailing within the room or mark room to which she is entitled need not act. So here's the key, right? Need not act to avoid contact until it is clear that the other boat is not keeping clear. So in a scenario like you're coming into a lured mark and there's a boat that is going to cut inside of you, when do you avoid them? I mean, if they always are going to go in there and there nothing changes, this is where I got in trouble. The boat was going to go in there. I closed the door and we hit. And I was wrong. But if the boat looked like at one point it was going to duck us and turn away, but then at the last second turned inside of us, and based on that action, I was not able to avoid them. So the key there is to make sure that you articulate in a scenario where um, you had rights and the other boat actually looked like it was going to stay clear, but at the last minute didn't and didn't give you time to keep clear. That's the whole key there. So you have to, if they're saying, well, you didn't avoid contact. Well, I tried to, until I knew that you weren't. I tried the moment I knew that you weren't going to stay clear, and then you have to kind of prove that. He turned down. I thought he was going to duck me, and then he didn't, and then it was too late for me to react. So does that kind of circle around, Seth, what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's more so, I would say, coaching our fleet and I would say more of the amateur sailors as to how not to lose a protest. So I don't care if I come in on port tack every single time. I bet if we went to the room, 95% of the time I could throw out every single person here in front of a committee on roll 14 if a collision occurred. If a boat touches you, if you foul somebody on port, and even as simple as them hailing starboard is enough time to acknowledge the fact that they could have ducked or tacked. And if there was a collision that was on the starboard boat, they were the ones at fault. So when you go into a protest, it's learning what to say to not immediately incriminate yourself for being at fault, even though you were correct.
Right, and that goes back to this. Okay. Hey, I tried to clip care the minute I knew they were not
That is
going to avoid.
perfect.
Right,
Yep, that is perfect.
right. So avoid
Yeah,
contact
I'm sure
until
you've
it
been on
is.
the receiving end of that one as well.
I've
That is a
lost. No, I've
brutal one.
lost. I've lost for sure.
Mhm. I
You
But
can
find
be
I
on
usually they
lost
starboard and get
lie
against
thrown
though.
out
reason.
by a
They
port
always
boat.
say they tried to avoid.
Right.
So
Yeah.
isn't it the key here? Um, it's weird because you'd figure the race committee would make the boat that was breaking a rule, make them, the onus is on them to prove that the other boat chose not to avoid contact, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that you are on port tack and you make it so that the other boat can, ends up touching you, right?
Yep.
So the thing there is, I mean, if I was trying to defend, if I was the one on starboard saying, dude, you know, you were in the wrong, and it wasn't until I could no longer avoid contact with you. I thought that you were always going to get out of the way because I gave you plenty of time to get out of my way. So, but you'd figure that the race committee would favor the boat that initially had rights over the boat that did not have rights in a situation such as that one. Because to
It's
come in and say that
probably 60
90% of the
40.
time when you're on port tack, you're going to get the starboard tack boat thrown out also if there's contact. It just, I mean, if that's the case, it just seems wrong, right?
It is wrong. And it is, I would say, in my experience, it's 60 40. 60% the correct boat or leeward or starboard boat, and 40 the other boat. I have been dead to rights wrong, walked into a protest hearing, and the didn't even go after. I would just comment that, hey, they could have avoided. And the starboard boat actually incriminated themselves and got themselves thrown out. Rule 14 is a rule that the committee can find a starboard boat in breach of or a leeward boat in breach of and throw them out even without a secondary protest.
Right.
So I have been on the receiving and the sending end of that one, where I've straight up told people, hey, I know I fouled you. I was going to do my spin and I did my spin and exonerated, but you hit us for no reason. Prime example, Jaime, when I fouled you at a top mark where you just barely nicked my rudder. Technically, if there was any world where you could have just put your bow down a degree or two and we went to a protest room, you could have been tossed for that when all it would have taken was a slight duck. That was not a big deal, and I absolutely fouled you, did my turn. But if we went to a protest room and I said all you would have had to do is head down a degree to avoid the contact, the protest committee would have likely gone after a Rule 14 on you. So you would have had me dead to rights if I didn't do my spin and it turned into a protest, and you still technically, based on what you say to the committee, could be tossed on Rule 14. You have to be very, very specific in your verbiage when filing a protest and talking to those committee.
So in that scenario, for instance, if you're coming in and let's say you're coming in on a port and you tack in front of them
Yep.
in the zone, right?
Yep.
So being the boat behind that needs to avoid a collision, when in that process you have to articulate this is like, oh, I thought he was going to, stay clear. Well, he tacked in front of you. At what point did you think he was going to be able to stay clear, right? You could make the argument, well, I thought he was going to, finish his tack, um,
And accelerate
so
away.
and accelerate away, which is really hard. You can see why Seth brings up a really good point is it becomes very gray and it becomes a situation of he said, she said. And if there's video, which tends to be more common nowadays, that's going to be, you just have to remember now that you still have to avoid the collision, right? And
Oh,
you
and
really
don't forget
try.
to keep your crew very quiet and tell them what they can and can't say. So there's always that one tactician who says, just hit him, because that right there is an admission of a Rule 14 breach. So I've actually heard other teams say that, and you can absolutely say, I heard the other team say, just hit him. And the other boat got tossed on Rule 14.
Yep. Yep.
That's a good, I appreciate stuff that you brought this up. This is pretty good. Thank
You
you.
will absolutely get bullied by pro teams in this if you do not master this one. You can be absolutely correct. Basic port starboard, and you can leave a protest where they walk away unscathed and you're thrown out for a collision that they caused.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think
Well,
that the other boat would walk away unscathed.
They can. They absolutely can, because what they can say is, I did foul him. I did my turns to exonerate myself. Whether or not they did,
I mean that's the
they
skating
usually
part,
walk and
right?
lie. And then it comes down to if you had avoided them and they had done their turns to exonerate themselves, now they've cleared themselves of the penalty, and the only one at risk of a penalty is you for hitting them instead of avoiding him.
correct. That is correct.
Okay.
And yeah, and it happens. There's
But a
there's
lot of those
people out there
protests are
that
malicious.
there's a handful of ones that we all sail against that will do that if it's in their best interest. Unfortunately, but it does happen.
I find
I wouldn't
most
say 60-40. I would say a little, And
Mm.
again, for as amount of times as there's contact around marks and starts, there's only about what 5% of protests happen.
Yeah. And of those, right, wrong, they're still 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely be
Okay.
nice, though, to kind of teach our local fleet how to deal with the protest, whether we do some mock protest or go through the full filing, the differences of dealing with an arbitration, difference of dealing with a single judge versus committee, and how that applies.
Yeah.
And then also for a future one, maybe go through how witnesses could help or hurt you. I've found in most cases, witnesses make things better, in the sense that they invalidate everything that you said.
Right.
So witnesses are kind of a good thing brought to a protest for if you're
Especially if
getting
they're not on
protest
your
in.
boat.
Correct.
They don't weigh much weight, but yeah. All right, I agree. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go through a little bit of the protest process what time do we have? We have another 10 minutes. And I think we can go on the next one is we can continue on the protest process and talk a little bit more about those different scenarios that you just mentioned, Seth, which I think are always good. The arbitration side of things, um, the multiple versus single, and it's actually to me it's one of the more difficult parts of our sport. I wish, we have rules for a reason, and I think, a lot of the pros think they can take advantage of a lot of the the rest of the fleet because they know there's a low percentage of somebody actually protesting, especially early in the regatta, early in the race. So they get a little more aggressive. And, to me, I think the best thing we can do for our sport is we have rules. Let's just all play by them. And I know it sucks to do a protest, and I know it's not easy, but if you get comfortable at it, it works pretty well. I had 3 years ago, IC37 event, and there was a gentleman on one of the teams that is super aggressive, and we protested him 3 times in one day, and we won. We won the first of the 2 protests. Didn't even have to hear the third one. And I told the owner of that team, I says he's only putting you in bad places that are trying to take advantage of everybody else because he's trying to prove something, right? And he doesn't understand that you got to settle down. You got to, not not just be the bully on the race course. And the only way that that gets settled is, I mean, I sat in a protest room. We said it for 2 days. We sat. He tried to even open it up in the morning. I probably spent 5 hours in a protest room on those 3 protests. But at the end of the day, that's to me what helps the sport get better.
Well, and the
Always.
other thing is you do that once, and then everybody doesn't take advantage of you ever again.
Well, they understand that
And
you're not going to be taken.
you're not a pushover.
And Jamie remembers when we did that in the Melges 32.
You mean
Remember
with
with
with the arms dealer?
yes, it's a really interesting story. Real quick, because I think it's kind of we talk
Relevant
about our
here.
sport. We do this because we like it. So a new Melges 30. We had worked as a team getting Smile and Wave Melges 32. We were playing with the top teams in the 32 class at the time. And we had started at the bottom, we were working our way up, and we would get taken advantage of. And I said, Jamie, there'll be a point where we're gonna be good enough against these guys that we've earned our right to be there. And that happened. We were going to the winter event down in the Caribbean, and there was this new team we hadn't recognized and coming in the winter mark, and it was again, he tacked in front of us right at the winter mark, fouled us, protested, and the professional came up and said, "Hey, Marty, I know we fouled you. It's my bad. We didn't do a circle, but this guy's new to this. I want him to have a good time." And I said, "All right, you get one. It was nice of you. We're all here
Have
to
fun.
enjoy the sport." And then I had to tell Jamie, I said, "Hey, Jamie, by the way, remember I told you we weren't going to get taken advantage of again?" But that guy turned out to, never happened again. And I think that's, there's a little bit of flexibility I think you also have to keep this sport a little bit fun, but you also, there's that balance, right? But you just, once you get taken advantage of a few times, that's not going to work. But so it was really nice. That relationship turned out really well, actually. All right, what time we got? We got a few more minutes. So let's go down to Rule 60 and just kind of, because this one's going to take a good bit at the end of the day. So we're going to go. Barking's not bothering you guys too much, is it? Did I lose you guys?
Not
No,
at all. I
I'm
don't hear
here.
any
No,
barking.
we don't even
Okay,
hear
good.
it.
Oh, good. Greg's just came home. So, all right. So we're just going to go through this and we'll review because it's actually not easy. Once you kind of start looking and reading through it and understanding it, at the end of the day. But let's talk about first of all the right to protest, right? So who can protest? If a protest, a boat or a committee may protest a boat. That's it, right? So if I'm on the shore looking, or if I see something as a spectator, there's nothing I can do. It's only the competitors and the committee that can actually file a protest. If a protest concerns an incident observed by the protestor in the race area, right? If the protestor is a boat, she shall hail protest, which we all know, right? And if her hull length is over 6 meters, conspicuously, which is always up for interpretation, display a red flag. At the first reasonable opportunity for each, she shall display the flag until she is no longer racing. So this one's always a very tricky one, right? And I think this is where, well, hey, I saw him around the windward mark. He said protest at the windward mark. He did the offset. He hoisted the kite, then he reached back and he displayed the protest flag. Is that reasonable? According to 99% of the protest hearings, no. It really has to be almost immediately at the end of the day. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But if a jury sees it, then that's where, if it takes too long, then that's a problem. I don't know if you guys remember a long time ago, I used to, when something happened, somebody said protest, I would start counting out loud, like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And, you'd get to 10. Well, that's probably not reasonable. There's been scenarios where I've done that, but I don't do that anymore. But typically that's not a problem. But again, if you're on your boat, right, is it on the back stanchion? Do you go and turn around and grab it and pull it out and keep going? Where is it on the main sheet? Sometimes people put it there, but for I think for the 24s, it's all on the back stanchion lifeline, right? Is that where everybody has it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Okay. If the protestor is a committee, right, it shall inform the boat after the race, but within the protest time limit of its intended protester. Now, there are a bunch of howevers, so let's look at that, right? So basically, somebody in the water has to say protest at the incident, and then the committee can protest before the protest time limit's out. But they also have to inform you, so that's a little tricky sometimes too. The protestee is not within hailing distance, right? So, however, if they're not in hailing distance at the time of the incident, what are you going to do, right? The incident was an error in sailing the course. Now, I don't know specifically what they're trying to hone in on here, but you don't if they didn't sail the right course, you don't have to say protest at that time of the incident. And that happened to us in Charleston actually with the Gamecock guys.
Hmm.
So if you see them doing something wrong, you don't have to say anything until after the fact. The incident was not observed by the protestor in the race area, which is another issue. If the incident was not observed by the protestor in the race area. So again, I don't know what the loophole they're trying to find there, but if there's an incident that was not in the race area, so I don't know, it could be Rule 69, right?
Or
You're at the
equipment or
dock
something.
and somebody says something. What was that, Gary?
Or it could be equipment or something they're doing.
Yeah. Yep.
Like they were being towed or they were diving the boat.
There you
There's a
go.
bunch of
There's
things
good.
that are
Hmm.
against the
That fall into
rules
the
that
sailing
would require
instructions. Yep.
protest.
Yeah. A protest committee decides to protest a boat under Rule 60.4. Then only the requirement for the protestor is to inform the protestee of the intention to protest. So let's look at 60-4 real quick. Protest validation. A protest is invalid. So again, I'm trying to understand a little bit about this one, right? What they're trying to articulate in this specific scenario. The protest committee decides to protest a boat under 60.4. So if they're going to protest them under protest validation, which is 16.4, a protest is invalid. However, let's see, that's it. So it just gives the race committee, if there's something that's, I guess, wrong on the protest validation side, they can protest. I don't know, not tell them until that point. And let's see, protest. If at any time the incident is observed to a protesting boat that a member of either crew is in danger or injury or serious damage has resulted, right? Do not apply to her, but she shall attempt to inform the other boat within the protest time limit. So if there's something super egregious where they can't get there in time or something like that, then there's a exception for them to still be able to file a protest. So if they're injured, you got to go to get medical help, and you can't put in the protest form in time, which is kind of good to know. But again, it's got to be, pretty serious for that to happen. You get, you come in and your mask falls down on the way in or something. The committee may inform the boat of its intention to protest by posting a notice on the official notice board. So they have a few things here, and I think it's just important to know,
Marty,
right?
it's up to the committee, by the way. This happened not that long ago at a race week. Somebody ran aground and missed a protest window because they didn't make it back in time, but they didn't deem running aground a good enough excuse
Yeah,
not to go online on your phone and file the protest.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They said while you were running aground, they asked a simple question: is there a cell phone on the boat? So in that hour and a half to 2 hours, you were sitting there stuck in place. Did none of you have enough time to go online and file the protest?
Right. It's good. It's a good point.
That
happens in Charleston.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And then the delivery of protests. We deliver protests shall be in writing and identify the protestor. So it's just, I know there's protests that have been filed and they didn't put the right information in, and the protest was disallowed. The protest shall be delivered to the race office or by such other methods, right? So we have online now with protests, so that's not a big deal, right? Time limit protests, decide there's a good reason to extend time. The protest time limit is for protestees about the incident observed in the race area 2 hours after the last boat is finished. For other protestees, 2 hours after the relevant is available to the protestor. 2 hours after the relevant information. So pretty standard. However, if the sailing instruction states differently, then the the time limit applies interest. So here's interesting. I was in Grand Rapids. We had an incident. We went to the protest hearing. We were thrown out. I went home. I looked at the data, and the facts found was that we tacked inside the zone. But when I looked at the data, it clearly showed, based on our speed and distance, that when we tacked, we sailed for almost 4 boat lengths before turning and bearing off around the windward mark. So we had new data. The only reason you can open up for one of the only reasons is because you have new information. So in the morning, I opened up to reopen the hearing, and the first question was, well, what was the information? What new information do you have? And I said, well, I was able to grab the data off my watch that shows that we tacked outside of the zone. We tacked 4 boat lengths out of the mark, and I can prove that that was the case. And the race committee says, well, was that information available for you yesterday? I said, well, it was on my watch, but I didn't access it. And he says, well, then we're not going to open up the hearing because it was available and you just did not take. So my question was, well, I would have to go home and get my computer. And they said, you are allowed to ask for more time to gather more data. So if you are not prepared for the hearing, you can state that you would like to have more time and that you need to, based on, I need to get my computer to pull the data down. Then they will grant more time for you to do that, a reasonable amount of time. So, but we'll go through that. But that was huge. Another lessons learned on my side of things, that you can actually ask for more time if you have a valid reason to be able to bring more data or information to a scenario.
It's good to know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, with the data now that we have, whether it's video, I know some race committees still don't accept video, which is, to me, but that's going away. That's going away pretty quickly. We talked about that one last time too. So.
Yeah, because I think you can use the video during negotiation at least before you go in.
Right, exactly.
So a video can be admissible in a hearing, as in arbitration, but not always admissible in the actual protest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Was this hopefully helpful? I think it's good. It's always
Yeah.
good to talk about it and go through it. It just really helps everybody. I do. I think it's great that Nadia's put this together. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Jaime, you're on mute.
Thank you, Marty.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you,
guys.
Marty.
Bye.
Next
I was
time.
gonna say, Marty, don't worry, I'll
Right.
call tactics for you.
There you go.
Well,
Just
according
you
to
do it.
Seth,
Do a
we
good
can
job. I
port
know you
tack the
will.
fleet, and if they hit us, we're good.
Just like that
Yeah, we'll just tell
TB-52
everybody you
did.
could have avoided us and you did. At least the first three guys.
That's really funny. That's really funny.
All
All right, guys. You have a good
Come
one.
with
right.
with
See you
guns.
guys.
Good luck.